going to talk a little bit about what obesity is, and we've already talked about this, but just to recap again, so it's fresh in your mind. When you eat a carbohydrate, it's like imagining eating a house, and then the house falls through your esophagus and falls into your tummy, and in your tummy it starts to rumble around and come apart in big chunks. And it goes into your small intestines where it rumbles around and falls into the slightly smaller but yet still really big chunks. And then it makes its way down into your small intestine. And then it gets all pulverized and demolished into its individual bricks. So and all those individual bricks are the sugars. And then from the small intestine, then it gets taken up into our bloodstream to provide our body with fuel. So that's how we produce energy from eating carbohydrates. But if our body doesn't need that fuel again, the insulin that the pancreas has produced to help facilitate the movement of that fuel into the cell, remember insulin is the transportation vehicle here, if our body doesn't need it, then the insulin goes around and it's like Pac-Man, going through our blood vessels, like Pac-Man, going through, collecting all the sugar and storing it in itself to be used later on. But we don't utilize it later on because we eat and we produce more energy that we don't need, so then we're constantly storing fat. And if we're storing fat, we are not eating fat. Now, someone just asked a question, is there a way to measure ketones? There are 3 ways to measure ketones. To know if you're fueling on fat. So the first way to measure ketones, which is the gold standard, is in your blood. So you can get a blood glucose monitor that doubles as a blood ketone monitor. There's a couple of them on the market. Abbott, there's a company called Abbott Technologies, and they make 2 models. They have the Abbott Precision Neo and the Abbott Precision Extra. And they will check both your blood glucose and your blood ketones. Now, a couple of quick tips on purchasing a blood glucose and ketone monitor. If you are in Canada and you go to the abbott.ca website and you just fill out your information, they'll send you one for free. In the U.S. And elsewhere, I believe you can purchase them. eBay is a great resource for these things. I saw them on ebay.com the other day for like $15 for the Abbott Precision Neo. That's the model that I have. The Extra is just as good, but I saw the on eBay, like a brand new one, for like $15, and I'm sure they don't cost too much at the pharmacy. The biggest pain in the butt is the test strips. They cost a small fortune. They're about 2.5 times the price of the blood glucose test strips. So in Canada, and I also believe in the United States, Costco is probably the best retailer to get them from. So Costco in Canada, they run around $2.50 a test strip. So that's the best place. I just ordered some on a website called well.ca actually, because I ran out before my next Costco marathon run, and they were $25 for a box of 10, so they were $2.50 each. I have looked at them on Amazon.ca. They're not that much cheaper. Now, Americans, you can take advantage of how far your dollar is going in Canada. So you could order them off of a website like well.ca, and it's like getting a 30% discount right now, because our dollar is a little bit weak next to yours. So that's the best way to check them. Also, if you're diabetic, hit up eBay for your blood glucose test strips. I purchased blood glucose test strips recently at a pharmacy just because I'm just crazy busy, to be perfectly honest. And I didn't really think about looking at eBay really for any of this stuff till the other day, and somebody commented on my Facebook that he found blood glucose test strips for half price on eBay. So I bought a pack. A pack was like $105 for 100 test strips. But that night when I was looking on eBay, the exact same pack I bought, it was on sale on eBay for like $50. The reason why is the expiry date. The expiry date was for like November of this year. But if you're diabetic, you're going to go through 100 test strips by November of this year in 6 months. So check out eBay. Lots of the retailers on eBay, they're people who their test strips are going to expire sooner than later. So they sell them on eBay to at least try to profit from them because they can no longer sell them in the store. Like the ones that I bought, it was the other day, and I bought glucose test strips, and they're not going to expire for 1 year. But I know I could be through 100 glucose test strips come November easily. So eBay is a really, really great resource for this stuff. Someone just asked too about checking blood ketone levels. I don't really think you need to check blood ketone levels all of the time. A couple times a week, I think. I know it's expensive. I actually check my blood ketones first thing in the morning, and I do it every morning. Blood ketones in the morning, they'll be lowest in the morning and they'll get higher throughout the day. Whether you're fasting or eating a low ketogenic diet, they will increase throughout the day. They'll be the lowest in the morning. And I'm more interested in the morning numbers because that's when your blood sugar levels should be the highest, and that's when your blood ketone levels should be the lowest. And I want to know what my worst case scenario is, because that tells me how much work I have to go. So that's why I like checking first thing in the morning, and I would recommend that you check first thing in the morning, so we know how much more progress that we need to be made. The second way to check your blood ketones is through your breath. Another product of fat breakdown is called is acetone. And a lot of people find when they start losing weight, they start getting this really horrific breath. It's sort of like raw broccoli, that taste that you get in your mouth after eating some raw broccoli kind of breath. That's actually a really good sign. It means your body's breaking down fat. So people can measure this with a breathalyzer. There's a breathalyzer called a Ketonix, Ketonix. And so there's a few breathalyzers out there. This is the one that sort of hits more of the mainstream. It's definitely the most popular one among the ketogenic community. It's called the Ketonix. So you blow into it and it will tell you whether or not you're burning fat, and it will give you some sort of ketone range. The third way, and the least reliable way, is to check your urine levels. Your urine levels, though, are not the best indicator of whether or not you're actually fueling on ketones or whether you're just producing them. If you have ketones in your urine, it means you're it means you're producing ketones, but it means you're not fueling on ketones. If you're fueling on ketones, you wouldn't be urinating them out. Your body would be using them as fuel. So when people first start to lose weight, I do recommend that they check their urine ketones, just if they're having trouble, just to see if they're actually losing weight, if they're burning body fat. So I'll have them check their urine ketones just to see if they have any ketones. But what happens over time, if you continue to lose weight and continue to eat a ketogenic diet, you won't have any ketones in your urine because your body's going to be using them as fuel. This happened to me. I started checking my urine ketones with keto sticks that you can get. You can get them at Shoppers Drug Mart if you're in Canada, Walmart, CVS, Walgreens. You can order them online. So I was checking my urine ketones, and eventually I had none. Like, I had no ketones in my urine, and I thought I was going to cry because I was like, I'm fasting so much. I'm losing all this weight. Like, how can I not be producing ketones? And I didn't realize how emotionally attached I had become to those ketone sticks cheering me on. And when I talked to Dr. Fung about it, he's like, that's awesome, because it means your body's actually keeping the ketones and using them as fuel. So I do think if you want to just experiment with checking ketones and you're new to checking ketones, I would definitely check your urine ketones first, just to see if you're burning fat. Now, the reason why they're the least accurate is because if you're fueling on ketones, number one, you're not going to be urinating them out. So you could still be in very deep ketosis and have no ketones in your urine or trace ketones in your urine. But if you know you're not at a stage where you are actively fueling on ketones, and you're checking your urine, the ketones can appear higher in your urine if you're dehydrated. And also if you've overhydrated, the ketones can appear to be less in your urine. That's why the urine isn't the best way. But I do think it's a good indicator to check your morning urine for your ketones if you're brand new to checking your ketones. All right. So for those of you out there who tell me, I don't really want to lose weight, but I'm super diabetic and my sugars are really high and I'm on diabetic medication. And for those of you with fatty liver disease but are still quite thin, you still have quite a lot of body fat. We have to keep in mind that you can still be very thin and still be very obese all at the same time. I know people who are 125 pounds and who are morbidly obese because of their body composition. The scale is the worst indicator on the planet of your body composition. Your body's made out of muscle and is made out of bone and is made out of fat and it's got water in it. And every day you breathe in 2 pounds of air, of oxygen, and you only excrete 1.2 pounds of carbon dioxide. So from just breathing, your weight can fluctuate. Your body is composed of many factors. And the scale just gives you the sum of all of those factors, but not the individual components. You can have a very small sum, but if you have osteoporosis, if you have very weak to poor muscle mass, and you're just a sack of fat, you can be a 100-pound sack of fat. I used to be, growing up, I had fatty liver disease, I had polycystic ovarian disease, I was underweight, but I was just this little tiny sack of fat with a mop of hair. That's all I was. I wasn't healthy. So even though the scale would read, about 10 or 15 pounds lower than the doctor wanted, I was unhealthy. I had a huge chunky monkey liver. My liver was such a chunky monkey, but I didn't look like a chunky monkey because it was all in my liver, but I couldn't see my liver. I had this whole beer gut in my liver of sugar, even as a child who was classified as underweight. But my body composition wasn't great. I always played competitive sports. Some of them I was better in than others, but I was always the weakest. Like I was always definitely the weakest. I had the least endurance, and I never understood. But my body composition sucked. Like I ate tons of juice. I drank lots of sodas as a kid and diet sodas when I entered my teens. Lots of pasta, lots of bread. There was no fat in my diet. Half my family, almost all my family, died from heart disease. So we never ate fat. It was boneless, skinless chicken breasts for all. So there is no fat. There are only egg whites in my diet. So I didn't eat any fat. So I had all of this insulin. It was all in my liver. A lot of it was in my pancreas too. I learned later on when I was going back and looking at some of my old test results from when I was a kid. And I had a mildly fatty pancreas even when I was a child. We're seeing so many fatty spleens now in ultrasound results. It's just unreal. So you can have all this fat hidden in your organs. But if your body composition is poor, you're still going to be in bad shape. We still have to siphon the bad fat out of you and put on good mass. Now, the great thing about fasting is that you produce all these awesome growth hormones. So you just get stronger and stronger and stronger over time when you produce these growth hormones. There are people whose weight doesn't change at all when they're fasting. Literally doesn't change at all. But they're losing like 8 inches, over a 6-week span in total around their body. Like they're losing all kinds of inches because when you fast, your body also produces human growth hormone, and that's going to help build bone. That's going to help build muscle. We have one patient. I like to tell his story. He came to us. He was about 6'1", and he was about 165 pounds. So if you can imagine, he didn't look very big, not at all. But his blood sugars were always like 20, which is 360 for our American friends. They were always so high. And Dr. Fung said, you gotta fast, you gotta fast. And this patient, he would just start to laugh. He's like, I'm gonna wilt away here. But his liver was so fatty, like we could see it on his liver ultrasound, but he couldn't see his fatty liver. Couldn't see how big his liver was, but he had this huge beer gut in his liver. His body composition was just all fat, even though he only weighed 165 pounds. It was just all fat. So we got him fasting. He actually got into like the 130s. And that day when he came in and he was in the 130s, he was so mad. He says, Megan, everybody thinks I have cancer. Everybody thinks I'm dying. He's like, my boss actually asked me if I had HIV the other day, after I'd spent the last 3 weeks trying to convince him that I don't have cancer. And I looked at John's blood sugar results, and his A1C, his A1C had come down. His A1C was like 5.4%. His blood sugars his morning blood sugars were averaging around 4.5, which is around 80, 81 for our American friends. So his sugars were good. So I knew we had siphoned all of the bad fat out of John. So I asked John to do something crazy and fast for 7 days for me. So John laughed and he said, all right, this is my one last hurrah. I'm going to fast for 7 days. And when I come back and I weigh in the 120s, you're taking me out to McDonald's for a Big Mac. So we shook on it, we laughed, and he left. And he came back a week later, and he looked angry. And I said, what's the matter, John? And he said, well, you're not going to believe that I fasted for 7 days. And I said, why won't I believe that? And he said, I honestly think I'm up a couple pounds. He's like 2 or 3 pounds. And he's like, and I've been so busy remodeling our new home. I've just been so busy remodeling our new home. It's been great for fasting. I haven't had time to eat. He's like, I've just been so busy. And I started to smile because that meant he was being really active at a time where he was producing a lot of human growth hormone. So he was getting stronger. And so I measured his waist, and his waist was actually down. But when I weighed him, sure enough, he was up almost 3 pounds. It was like 2.8 pounds. And he said, I just don't get it. He's like, how can my weight go up? And I said, you've been really active at a time when your body's been producing a ton of human growth hormone. So you've actually gotten stronger. You put on muscle. And John was like, oh, how about that? Now, a lot of celebrities do this. They talk about it openly. Benedict Cumberbatch, he talks very openly about how he uses intermittent fasting to produce growth hormone to help aid in his workouts when he was getting ready for his role in Star Trek and Doctor Strange. I think it's called Doctor Strange. I'm not up on my Marvel movies. My husband would be very disappointed in me right now. But he used the intermittent fasting. So if you search Benedict Cumberbatch and you look up Benedict Cumberbatch and intermittent fasting, he talks about how he would fast till 20, 22 hours, and he would exercise. So he would wait till his body had, this nice little pool of growth hormone being produced, and then he would go to the gym and work out and do a killer weightlifting routine, and then he would break his fast after he worked out. And that's what he used to help put him in, or help put so much muscle on him before his role in Star Trek, because they really wanted to, Star Trek 2, because they really wanted to bulk him up. Other celebrities do this too for training. Ashton Kutcher has been very open about how he uses intermittent fasting too to help him get in shape right before movie roles, and how he does 24-hour fast a couple times a week and really does a high intensity weight training on those days to help him gain muscle mass. And historically, people have on and off used intermittent fasting to help women repair osteoporosis. So you'll hear me talk in my follow-ups about how I've just done a longer fast. So last spring, I really focused last winter and spring from January to about the end of May. I focused on doing more fasting, and I went from osteoporosis to borderline osteopenia. Then wedding season hit, and life was really crazy. So now you'll hear me talk about how I'm fasting 72 hours every other week, and that's because I want to go from osteopenia to normal bone mass density. So that's why I'm fasting, is to increase my bone mass and to increase the muscle mass also. So just because the number on the scale says you're in good shape, that doesn't mean that your body composition is in good shape. So people ask if I think that they should get DEXA scans, the DEXA body composition scans, before they start fasting. And I do think it's a good idea for most people to know just what they're realistically dealing with. Chances are, if you know that you're overweight and you know that your weight lies in your midsection, then that's all the DEXA scan is going to show you. But if you're somebody who doesn't really think you need to lose a lot of weight, but you are diabetic and you do have fatty liver disease, I really encourage you to go get a DEXA scan done, just so you can be realistic, so you can see what your body composition is. Because I've had patients who are 120 pounds, 125 pounds, and they're like 40–45% body fat. And they are very, very weak. And it's strong. It's a strong muscle, strong bone. That's what's going to protect you and keep you healthy in the long term. Not being 125 pounds if you don't have any muscle or any bone. So body composition is of critical importance. A lot of people come into the clinic and they ask how they can be overweight but not be diabetic. Now, in your midsection, you have these two fat pouches. You have one between your skin and your abdominal cavity, and you have one between your abdominal cavity and your organs. So people who are not particularly diabetic or don't have blood sugar issues yet anyways, but do have larger bellies, most of your fat is stored in the subcutaneous pouch. So your organs are protected from that fat by the abdominal cavity. Now, for people who have fat in the pouch between the abdominal cavity and the organs, that's called visceral fat, or in this diagram they call it intra-abdominal fat. So this intra-abdominal fat or visceral fat, that actually can filter in through your organs, it can wrap around your organs, it can really mess up organ communication, and that's the kind of fat that really causes diabetes and causes issues with organs. And sometimes because that fat can filter in so much throughout all the organs, it doesn't stick out so much. So for people who tend to be very slender, they have a lot more of this visceral fat, this intra-abdominal fat. People who aren't diabetic but tend to be on the heavier side of things around their midsection, they tend to have a lot of subcutaneous fat. And unfortunately, sometimes people get to a state where they have a lot of both.